Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. This is Strength for Today's Man, Volume 90. Just in case this is your first time being here, your first time viewing, your first time listening, today I want to talk to you guys about God still working. That's what I want to talk about. I want to encourage you to know that no matter what you're going through, no matter what you're dealing with, no matter how hard it seems, God is still working. Romans 8:28 is a perfect scripture to go to when we are dealing with some of the trials and tribulations of our lives, to know that God is still working on our behalf. It says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. God is still working. Let me share a little bit with you guys. Romans is an awesome book to read. This is one of Paul's greatest letters that I feel he's written to the church, because Romans is placed first among his 13 epistles. And epistles are nothing but letters that Paul wrote. And even though we have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, they represent the work and words of Jesus Christ. But when you start reading in Romans, Romans explores the significance of Christ's sacrificial death. And to understand where Paul comes from, because he writes in past tense, he writes in present tense, and he writes in future tense, because he wants us to understand how important it is to know that God is still working. It's important to know that Paul records the most systematic presentation of doctrine in the Bible. Romans is more than a book of theology. It's more than just learning about God. It's more than just knowing about God, which that is important. If you're studying theology, that's very important, because that's the knowledge of God. You're learning about God. It is also a book of practical exhortation. Paul is constantly exhorting the church. He is constantly writing exhortations to the church. The good news, which is the gospels of Jesus Christ, is more than just facts to be believed. It's a life to be lived. And this is why it's important for us to know that God is still working on our behalf. No matter what you're going through, no matter what you're dealing with, you might be dealing with death from a loved one. You might be dealing with problems in the home. You might be dealing with trials and tribulations on the campus ground. You might be dealing with bullies in the classroom. You might be dealing with all sorts of disappointments right now. You might be dealing with headaches, complaints on your job, issues in the neighborhood. Doesn't matter. Does not matter what you're going through right now. This is what I want you to know. God is still working. You're not alone. The Bible promises that he will never leave us, nor will he forsake us. God is consistent in working for you. God is consistent in loving you. God is consistent in providing for you. God is consistent in being there as your protector. We just need to be consistent in our life. We need to be truly dedicated to being obedient and faithful to God. The reason why we have a lot of issues now is because our unfaithfulness. The reason why we have a lot of problems in our life is because of our disobedience. It goes hand in hand. If you're obedient, a lot of things go your way. If you're disobedient, a lot of things are not going to go your way. So with that being said, know that God is still working on your behalf. Why? Because he says so in his word. And we know that all things work together for the good to them that love God. If you love him, things are going to work your way. If you love him, things are going to go your way. If you love him, more doors are going to be open to you. Just be faithful. Just be obedient. Paul appeals to our weaknesses in many of the writings in Romans. And this certainly applies to difficult things that we may have already experienced in our lives. So he deals with past tense, present tense, and future tense, because there are a handful of verses in chapter 8 that deals with future tense. It's almost as if Paul is telling us to prepare our hearts for whatever comes our way. He's telling us, prepare your hearts, guys. There's a lot of things going to come your way. There's a lot of trials and tribulations that are going to come your way. And ultimately, he wants us to know that when, not if, life gets hard. And we know life gets hard. Life has been hard. Life is not fair. But we serve a fair God. God is still working. And I'm going to bring this to an end, guys, because I don't want to go too long. There's so much depth in this verse. Even when your health is poor, know that God is still working. Even when your job is in jeopardy, God is still working. Even when you can't seem to get along with those around you, God is still working. Even when you feel that you're all alone, nobody loves you, God is still working. Even when you feel that you are not loved by God, God is still working. He still loves you. You can trust him. You can trust knowing that he is still working no matter what. So what's the gist of the day? God is still working. Okay, what's the moral of this lesson? Trust. That's the moral. Trust. Trust God. Trust to know that he's still working on your behalf. I know life is hard. I know life is difficult. I know there are times that you just want to give up. I know you want to just throw in the towel. But I say to you, do not throw in the towel. Do not give up. I don't care what the world is doing. I don't care what direction the world is going. Trust God. Hold on to God's unchanging hand and know that God is going to continue to work on your behalf. God is still working. And I want to close with this right here. God, help me to trust you even when things get hard. And please keep working on me, in me, and around me. That is so profound right there. We want God to continue working on us, in us, and around us. This is Strength for Today's Man, Volume 90. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Remember, if you enjoyed what you heard, if you like what you heard, subscribe to the channel, like the channel, and share the channel with someone else. Don't keep it to yourself. Share the wealth. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow on the next podcast. You guys be blessed.